Hello, my name is Jim Darling, Mayor of City of McAllen, and this is Meeting with the Mayor. And today we had Sergio Munoz, State Representative from District 36.
Yes, sir.
And your district runs all the way from La Jolla. How far?
Well, I get Palmview, Abram Road. I go all the way to I Road and Far. Most of my area here in McAllen is South McAllen area. So
you kind of go like this then?
Yeah, district. I mean, it's the beauty of redistricting, which is going to be something that we're going to be looking at this coming session. But I do get a majority of the area south here in McAllen, which would be STC, Convention Center, all the areas south, all the way down to the bridge. So
now you're Vice Chair for Land and Resource Management.
Right.
So everything's off the table now. We have a new. I don't know how you guys elect a speaker, but it's kind of behind closed doors how that happens. And so we have a new speaker. How is that going to play out? For your standpoint?
Well, I think the membership already, I think, has come together and have put their support between an individual already for speaker. Although technically we won't vote for him until we get sworn in. But the authority of the speaker, one is the organization of the committees, and also sometimes the direction and input of the members in terms of the policy of the House. Obviously, every speaker has their own way of conducting business. Some of them a little bit more hands-on. Others, seek input from some of the members as to what the direction and views of the House should be. But half of the committee's membership are made up of seniority, and the other half are speaker appointments. So that's how sometimes, even if you don't have the seniority, you can be put on a committee based on the speaker appointment.
Now, seniority has kind of changed. It used to be there were a lot longer, not terms, but sessions. You had somebody who's on there for 20 years. That's changed a lot. Is there an average this year? Have you noticed it?
Well, I mean, me personally, this is going to be my sixth term in the legislature.
So you're kind of a middle
I'm already
long
going
guy,
into
right?
I'm already in the between the 30 to 40 out of the 150. So my seniority has definitely gone up a lot more. After the last session, and like I mentioned, that's really important for a lot of the committees, especially when they're looking at the seniority for the appointments.
Now, Democrats picked up a couple seat members, right?
Yeah, they, the balance in the House is a little bit more apparent than in the Senate. And to me personally, I feel that it's good to have balance because it forces people to work with both sides of the aisle. And one of the ways that I've always looked at things, as many people, is, politicking is one thing, but governing is very different, right? And, once we set foot there at the Capitol, we get sworn in. I mean, our job is to work for the betterment of everybody that we represent, regardless of political affiliation.
Well, last couple of years, it's been pretty tough for cities up there with the Republican, kind of conservative Republican agenda. Yeah. Last session was even worse than the one before. Hopefully, I think especially like no annexations, especially in South Texas, but otherwise, is going to have some ramifications over the years. With the county's lack of building permits, zoning, brush collection, garbage collection, all the rest of the things, streetlights, for instance, that the county doesn't do. And you're going to see developers trying to save money are not going to request annexation, and ultimately it's going to we're going to be spending more money than we would have originally.
No, and I think that's one of the things that we obviously hope is part of the framework, right, and the mood in terms of legislating going forward. And I think one is being able to have public input and discourse, even though at times maybe there are people that don't agree with the position of people from the city or the county. But we need to be able to have that communication and work together towards a common goal, which is benefiting the people that the city and the county leaders represent, just like us within our legislative districts.
Now, you guys came in, there was about 4 or 5, I can't remember right now, but all came in about the same time, and you're still there. So, I mean, between that and the 2 senior senators, we must have a pretty strong block.
Yeah, definitely. I think one is reminding everybody, as we have in the past, and working together, which is the same goal that I know all of my colleagues share, representing not only our respective districts, but the whole Rio Grande Valley as a whole, and having that communication and that partnership in terms of making sure that we do what's best for all of us here in the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah, I think it's one of the stronger. There's more obviously representatives in Houston and Dallas area, but I don't know of anybody more that's tight-knit than our group in the Valley. I think, in the legislature.
Yeah, and it's good for us too to maintain that closeness and that working together because sometimes we are unfortunately pitted against other parts of the state when they look at South Texas versus North Texas, West Texas, East Texas, and I mean it shouldn't be a competition, but at the end, sometimes we do have to work together to stand up for our communities and for our region.
Now let's talk about COVID. I mean, look at that's going to be a legislative issue. You look at what's happening in El Paso, real hot spot, and the Attorney General is suing the county judge. Wouldn't it be up to the governor to say, hey, I know it's my order, here's, whatever. I'm a little confused on how that's being handled.
Well, you see, and I think, COVID itself has been very challenging, as you know, not only from the city standpoint, but I mean, for all of us on a personal level and on a professional level. And however, in my opinion, I think what the governor needs to do is give the local control authority to the locals because everybody is facing a unique situation that's very different throughout the state of Texas. And you can't take away the power of the local authorities and then give it back selectively when it's convenient, because then I think it offsets the impression that you give right to the community. And right now, what they're facing in El Paso, I think the county judge has taken the position that he feels is the position that he needs to take for the county. And for us here, it could happen at any point in time too, that we're looking to our local authorities to use what they feel is necessary to protect the good of the people.
Do you think that's a legislative issue? It's going to be some bills brought for that?
I think when you look at COVID overall in general, obviously one of the main things that's going to be looked at is the authority that was utilized by several leaders throughout the state, and whether or not that autonomy should be given at all, when at the end it should require some legislative input, right, from the members that were elected in the legislature to represent their districts. Additionally, the utilization of resources and how certain money was spent and sent, obviously that should have some legislative oversight, right? Because, right now here in Texas, we're still sitting on about $5 billion from the federal government that, unless there's some news given to us before the end of the year, we don't know yet if that money is going to lapse or not. But our communities and our counties need help.
Yeah, we had a telephone call with the judge this morning, County Judge Richard Cortez, and he's done a good job. But we are out of money, and so they're going to try to see if there's any money that the city haven't spent, and it's only $300,000 that's left. And so we're looking at maybe some county money if it's available. We'll know by tomorrow. But that's an important thing. The state. When you look at it, what's $7 billion in a rainy day fund, and you guys are already $5 million in the hole, and you had put some money for education and out of the rainy day from last time. So is the state broke?
Well, right now the deficit, you're looking at about $4.7 to $5.3 billion deficit, right? Projected deficit for the next biennium. We have, as I mentioned, a little bit over $5 billion that's still sitting in the state of Texas coffers for all purposes that hasn't been spent. If we don't hear anything by the end of the year and Texas, retains that money, then I'm assuming that some of that is going to be used to plug the hole in the budget, in addition to maybe utilizing other sources of revenue like the rainy day fund and others to try to plug the hole. But definitely we know that our economy was hit, on a state level, oil and gas.
Oil and gas and sales tax are your two biggest sources of revenue. We used to be the #1 per capita contributor in sales tax. So we were hoping that maybe we get some support by the state, and if it's healthy, of opening up the border to non-essential travel. And because we tell them for every $2 we get, the state gets $6.25, and we're probably hurting almost per capita more than any city in the state of Texas because of sales tax. So we feel your pain, the state.
And it's going to be a very challenging session overall when you look at the pandemic, the COVID and everything that it's created, and for all purposes is going to be a part of us for the near future.
Yeah, so even if the vaccine, by the time it gets approved, you're probably talking January earliest, and then to get it out, and then you're over this flu season, and so who knows?
It's, I think, the mask and the social distancing and the other precautions, for all purposes, I think are going to be a way of life.
Now, we both wear our mask
Yes,
here
yeah,
all
we have
day,
it.
and we took it off because we're 6 feet, and nobody understands what I'm saying with the mask on. A couple of commissioners said it's a good idea. I should wear it all the time, but I'm not sure. So there's obviously a need for budget money in the state, but and you can't print it like the federal government. That's, I think, everybody thinks, well, why don't we get more money? Well, from the state, from the federal government, we're going to have to pay that back ultimately. But you think there's opportunity for some of the things that revenue sources that the state hasn't approved in past years because of political or moral issues?
Well, I mean, one of the things that for example, last session that came up, and I think for the latter part of 2 sessions to go, which was the online sports betting, right? There was a big issue that came up, and whether or not Texas was allowing it or not allowing it, even though people were connecting to the web and doing sports betting, throughout the country, and really. One of the things that we get, that I personally get, asked all the time is, when are we going to legalize gambling?
Well, you already have. I mean, lottery is, I don't know what you know, but lottery is a game, and if you look at the odds, it's really favored.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people say, they're like, well, why don't we just, and I understand, because we've heard the argument for or against it, as long as I've been in the legislature, but the reality for us is we don't vote to legalize it or not. In fact, the only thing that we can vote on is to give people the opportunity to vote on it as a constitutional amendment. And to me, I feel, whether we agree with it or not, on a personal level, we should all be for allowing people to cast a vote in favor or against,
right,
on that issue.
Because you really have, and you look at the lottery system as it is, and I think it's more likely, one of the arguments is poor people shouldn't, but that's more of every store, every place has it, and people use it for spare change or whatever. I think it has much more of an impact on low income earner than gambling in the casino, for instance.
Let's look at bingo, right? I've gone to bingo halls where, I see people playing with 5 or 6 machines at one time. Now, is that good or bad for them? Well, I guess it's for each person to decide on their own, but that's also seen as another form of gambling to a certain extent, right?
But thank God it's there, right? So we start off in churches or bingo.
So there's I think all of those discussions, and like I said, I think whether people agree with it or not, sometimes we should at least vote to allow the people of this state to vote on what they believe is best for them, right?
Yeah.
And to exercise their right for or against it. And if something that we put on the ballot, passes, great. Right. If it doesn't, well, we have to respect that too.
I'm just, I'm not for or against it. I just think it's a little hypocritical to say we're not for gambling. So we're a big agricultural state, you know, and so there's a crop that we could probably grow. I'm not advocating that either, but it's a lot of money, and it's significant in the border because if you grew it here, you'd stop the smuggling from Mexico of marijuana, but. That's a big decision too. Yeah,
there's been a lot of discussions over the years. There was a hemp farming bill that passed last session that allowed people to apply for a license to grow it and to grow hemp and to do certain things with it. Just like we have the issue with the cannabis oil and how that was passed in the state, which obviously the percentages and all that following the law, but a lot of it had to do because of the medical assistance that was needed and people that were advocating for it, for families that had people that were suffering from seizures and things like that. So, a lot of times they're not maybe the most popular discussions to have with certain people, but the one thing that we should give everything deference to is have that discussion, right? Because a lot of times we feel that we might believe a certain way because of certain things, but yet there's always 2 sides to everything. And regardless, like I said, of whether we agree or not with something, we should be able to discuss it and have a good substantive discussion about any issue.
Now, speaking of that and COVID and discussion of the people, do you know what the restrictions are going to be as to the Capitol, or no visitors, hopefully no lobbyists? If you're not going to let visitors, you shouldn't have lobbyists.
Well, the lobbyists, I think
all the lobbyists will all be done at the expensive restaurants downtown.
Doing that. Well, I think that's still a very big question mark in general because they've closed on the Capitol, and they've only allowed limited access for staff and members of the legislature. And I think that's going to be a very big challenge and task as to what would be the best way to do it if you can do it. And I mean, when you just look at the members in the legislature and their staff, you're already talking about several hundred people, and then you go into support staff and you're already in the 1,000.
Yeah, and it's not a great building to keep people separated between elevators and stairs and circular and all those things.
And the thing is that once there's an outbreak or there's a positive case, they have to shut the whole place down.
Right.
And I mean, they really have to disinfect the majority of the building by hand because of the historical nature of it. So, I mean, that's also, goes into maybe 3 or 4 days of downtime. So those are ongoing discussions that they're having with the Senate and the House. And really right now, there is no certain, book to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it and how it's going to happen.
I heard a good one is limit the number of bills that any individual could file. I think that's something they ought to
Well,
look at.
sometimes I joke with people, but it's very true because a lot of times people would tell me, they're like, Sergio, it's okay if you guys don't pass anything. We already have enough laws on the books, right?
Well,
So-
5,500 bills are filed. You said, just in 2 years, was that many things maybe fixed? Or
Yeah, so, but I do have people, like I said, that do, or they're terrified, right? Unfortunately, because the legislature's in session and they think, okay, well, now there's going to be some new regulation or some new mandate. And I mean, I understand and it's a balance that we have to find with everything, but like I said, I mean, you have people that feel strongly on both sides.
Now, the legislature counts on interim hearings during the session. It's been very, very difficult. So I don't know how many, and a lot of those interim hearings result in recommendations of bills. What do you think that effect of COVID had on that process?
Yeah, well, because back in March, April, when usually the interim hearings usually start ramping up, is when the pandemic hit and they closed on the Capitol, which in essence affected the ability to hold the hearing. So a lot of the committees received through written submission recommendations for their interim charters, and that's how it was put in the report. But one of the things that was left out, obviously, was the live testimony, right, where we had people that would want to show up in person to advocate for or against one of the interim charges. And I think that's going to be also very challenging going forward in the session, in allowing people to go in and let their voice be heard, or finding a way for them to use it.
And just getting people into that, circulation is very difficult.
Yeah.
I'm on about 20 boards or committees, and we do a lot of Zoom meetings, and I notice the quality's gone down just depending on the large group. Well, like the council of government's 25 members,
Yeah.
and it's just tough to have.
Yeah,
effective meetings.
I mean, I think the Zoom overall for all of us has been, I guess we can all think of situations where it's beneficial time-wise, but then it's also not, right? Because you feel that you miss a lot of that one-on-one discussion on issues that sometimes, because you're on Zoom or others, maybe people don't want to have it for whatever reason.
I would think, especially in the legislature, there's a lot of talk. You really want to talk to somebody. You meet behind. Not the secret. But I mean, you meet. It's
well, there's people
important.
that feel more comfortable having a discussion with you and your staff versus having it with 20 people.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know what the answer is, but obviously we're all trying to work our way to some common ground for it.
Well, it's going to be Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and so all that's going to go very quickly. And the legislature meets, January 12th?
Second Tuesday.
Whatever that is. And so you got to be ready for that. So you're ready? You got your staff all geared up? And
yeah, I mean, most of my staff has been with me for several years now, and I guess either they haven't found another job or
they're very good. Very approachable. They answer you. You have a great staff.
But I've been very blessed with my staff, and like I said, they've been with me for several sessions already, and we've kind of planned our office set up a little bit, and in terms of being able to communicate with the people within our district, and then we're obviously waiting for direction from the House as to what they'll allow or not.
And so now, with the new speaker, not everything's a clean slate, but sort of. So you don't have any. Do you have any prediction what you're going to end up on, or what you like to do?
I mean, a lot of times, we get asked what our preferences would be, and where we would be more in tune with. But I've served on the Appropriations Committee for 4 sessions already, and I enjoy it a lot because, one, we get to know what the budget forecast looks like and where we can invest additional resources. But it's also, one of the things that people don't know about that is that, only about 16 to 18% of the state budget hasn't been committed already.
Right. Not much just non-discretionary funds.
Yeah, non-discretionary.
Yeah.
As a state, we've made promises and we've invested in priorities throughout the state, and our job is to make sure that they're fulfilled.
We spent a lot of time in the budget, but it's not like you say. Our budget is relatively small. I would say less than 10% is discretionary capital improvements. But it's a fantastic way to learn how the operations of the city and I imagine the state's going and those kind of things.
And here, I guess, as we mentioned earlier, one is going to be the COVID money that we're currently still sitting on, and then looking at the federal government to see if there's going to be another type of stimulus plan that's going to be authorized that might even bring additional resources to the states.
Great. Well, stay safe. Okay.
Well,
we
thank you,
appreciate
Mayor,
it,
likewise,
Representative.
and
Appreciate you being very much with us.
And thank you for having me. And like I said, I look forward to working with you all again this coming session.
We'll have you back during the session, hopefully.
That's right.
At your
Yes, sir.
appointments. Great.
Thank you.
And this has been your meeting with the mayor. Thank you.